This is live, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, because I tweeted it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. Hello and welcome to your latest edition of the Royal Blue Podcast. I am your host, Ian Croll. We are live on YouTube, and joining me in the studio for today's episode, we have Joe Thomas. Joe, how are things? All good?
Yeah, very good. Cheers, Ian.
Good stuff. Just before we get going, I want to apologise for the schedule being all over the place this week. We've had a few things going on. We've had Alan Myers in on Monday, and that podcast went out on Tuesday, and then we weren't able to get a show out on Wednesday. But Joe has come to the Saviour Thursday podcast, and we are back to normal on Friday with, another Royal Blue podcast on Friday. I think Gav Buckland is going to be in the studio. Joe, you're off. You're going to be... probably fast asleep or up watching the Ashes.
Well, I'll be up watching the Ashes tonight, and then I don't know what I'll be doing tomorrow, but yeah, I'll probably be sleeping when you'd be hoping to do this. So I am missing the Man United press conference because I just I do quite like the cricket.
Big fan of the cricket.
I just there was no point pretending that I was going to be doing anything other than being there to watch the first ball at 2:30 tonight. So 2:30 will probably turn into 4:30. Will probably turn into 6:30, and next thing you know, I'm falling asleep on David Moyes at Finch Farm, and that's really, really not a good look. So I thought, you know what, I'll just I'll play it safe, and I had a bit of time to take off. So I thought, well, I'll have tomorrow off as well. So
I've got to confess, I did make a bit of a fool of myself in front of Joe just before we came on air. I am what we would probably call a casual cricket fan, and Joe, said, are you going to be, are you going to watch the cricket? And I said, who is it, England v India? Didn't realise that it was the Ashes.
You undid yourself, didn't you, very quickly.
Okay, today's agenda, Premier League football is set to return, but we are still 4 days out from Everton's trip to Old Trafford. So we thought we would do a bit of a preview show. We've got team news thoughts, we've got selection dilemmas, potential tactical tweaks, key battles to watch out for, as well as predictions. And as always, give us a thumbs up, drop us a like, and subscribe to the channel. I'll try and read out as many comments as possible. It's probably not going to be an hour-long show today. We are going to try and keep it fairly short just because we are relatively busy. But as always, I do appreciate the support that you give the show, and thank you for tuning on the live, and thank you for listening on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. As always, a little word for our sponsor to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan. Go to nordvpn.com/EFC. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan, and there is no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast episode description. Before we do get going, Joe, some positive news that I do want to share on the podcast. So the 1878 fan group have announced that their first display at the new stadium will be under the lights against Arsenal on December 20th. Huge effort from everyone involved. Obviously, I know there was a few fundraisers and get-togethers to get this over the line. Full details are going to be disclosed at a later date, but I mean, I know a lot of people not thrilled with the time change of the Arsenal game, but this first display probably couldn't come at a better time.
Oh, it should be brilliant. I mean, the work that they've done over the years has been absolutely fantastic, and I don't think it's too far to say that the work of them and Everton supporters, home and away, is probably, the margins have been so tight between Everton staying up and what would have been a catastrophic relegation that. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that they've had a positive impact on that and can take some of the plaudits for helping getting the players over the line. So, we saw the way they did the Goodison Park send off last year as well. Everything they do is a touch of class, and I really can't wait for this. And I agree with you on Arsenal in the sense that I understand that I'm in an incredibly fortunate position of living local and travel, being able to access the stadiums at times when the peak traffic is gone. I'm there 3 hours before kickoff, and I'm normally there 2-3 hours after. So I don't see the worst of the traffic things. Obviously, I haven't had to rearrange travel. I have had to rearrange some plans for it. I must admit, but I do think the timing wasn't great. But that Saturday night before Christmas under the lights, I think it will be a pretty good occasion. That is something that I am looking forward to. Something that I think it'll be a special atmosphere, and this will only emphasise that as well.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to seeing what they've got planned. No doubt it will be amazing. Just in reference to the announcement that they did put out on X, they are looking for volunteers, and they've asked for people to get involved. So I guess DM them on X or Twitter if you are in the lower south, in the upper south. Get involved. Joe, let's get into the United preview then. I think, obviously, coming off the back of the Fulham win, we've had the international break. Hopefully no momentum has been lost as such. But I do feel like there's this kind of train of thought that it's not just this game, but maybe the next 4 to 5 weeks or 4 to 5 games is probably like really crucial in Everton's season to see how it's going to pan out. There's some difficult games in there, some games where you think, well, we can definitely pick up points, but how big is this next period in Everton's season?
I think I'd probably try and urge away from that mindset, to be honest. Look, I think Everton will be perfectly fine this season. I think they're good, they're making progress, and there'll be some big highs, and that's what I'm actually looking forward to. I think a lot of people kind of looking at the fixture list and seeing the jeopardy there. I'm almost the other direction. I've been saying this for a while, but I do think that Everton are going to turn someone over this season. Like,
it's going to happen.
You're laughing at me because you keep saying it. Like, I just do think that this team has enough talent in it when things go well. There will be times when things go well, and it may be that they catch someone like a Chelsea or like an Arsenal. Or like Man United don't have Europe, but a team that Everton haven't traditionally beaten over the last decade. You catch them after an international break, catch them after a European game, or they underestimate Everton, and I think Everton can get them. And I think they were, came very close to doing it against Man City. They should have been. They had 3 good chances at 0-0 in that game. One of them, Beto's first. Does he quite get there or not? I don't know, but he should have scored one of the 2 chances, I think, that Ndiaye created to him. And then Donnarumma made a good save from Ndiaye again at 0-0. Goal would have changed the complexion of that game. Spurs, obviously, at home, haven't had a better record against, but they could easily have gone 1-0 up in that game. And even Liverpool, that first half an hour was one of probably the worst first half an hour of the season, maybe with the exception of Leeds. That was a bad game. But second half, they got back into that game, and I think, had they not left themselves so much to do, I think they could well have taken something away from Anfield. So, I'm looking at these games, and Man United is one of them. I know they have improved in form, but you look at Man United, you look at Man United, and you look at Chelsea. They do have their vulnerabilities. They have been beaten by teams this season that, again, they would traditionally expect themselves to beat, although they might not be dealing in reality there. Given where they are, but I think there is plenty of opportunity. You look at Newcastle come in, their away record isn't the best, so it is going to be tough. But I mean, it would get very cliched at this point, but there aren't easy games in the Premier League, and I'm looking forward to this, and I just think that I do a newsletter over on Substack which people can follow, and I've written about this today about how the pressure seemed to build ahead of Fulham. And whilst I understand that there was frustration over some of the results, and I think justified frustration over some of the in-game decisions that David Moyes was making, and his lack of willingness, apparent lack of willingness to use his squad, was causing concern. I think that ended up almost feeling like a bit of a make or break game, and I can't understand why, but I do think that when we look at the context of this season, it's understandable given how bad last few years have been. Everyone wants to look forward, and how quickly can Everton make the big strides? How quickly can they get into the top 10 and into Europe and into the latter stages of trophies? And those are great aspirations, but it's probably also easy. It's probably too easy to forget just how far they've already come in such a short period of time. This time last year, Everton had an absolutely disgusting start to the final year of Goodison Park. They'd lost at home to Brighton, they'd lost home to Bournemouth, they'd lost home to Southampton. They'd scraped the draw at home to Newcastle only because Jordan Pickford saved the penalty. They scraped the draw to Fulham only because Beto scored in the stoppage time. They scraped the draw against 10 men Brentford somehow only because Jordan Pickford made 2 one-on-one saves against 10 men. And they'd just got their second win of the season. It took them until Moyes came in January against Spurs to get their 4th win of the season. Now, I'm not saying everything's perfect now by any stretch of the imagination, but you look at it, they've only lost 1 in their first 7 games at Hill Dickinson. They've done the complete opposite there, turned that into maybe not a fortress, but a really positive place this season where they built momentum and picked it up at key points. They've already got those 4 wins. So yes, the table is probably going to be a little bit closer this year, and we've seen the promoted sides put up a much bigger fight already, but I think we have to remember just where they've been and just judge them against that as well. So it is going to be a difficult couple of weeks, and I know that pressure will build if things go wrong, but I hope that people have patience if they can see that the right things are trying to be done. I think, and that will extend to maybe experimenting a little bit with the squad more, and certainly giving more chance to likes of Barry and Roll and some of the others. So
just looking at some of the comments coming in now. So Sam Banks Blues believes a point versus United would be good, and an interesting comment here which got an interesting question hopefully. So David Yoro 2002, I hope that is the right pronunciation, he says we can beat them and Moyes needs to win a game like this, which for me, does that beg the question? Does David Moyes need a victory over like a United more than maybe actually what Everton needs? I know that comes hand in hand.
I think David, we had all this talk obviously going into the game at Anfield and his long record with multiple teams of not having got a win there. I do think a win as Everton manager at one of these clubs would help. And there's no doubt that, we talk about the way pressure built ahead of Fulham. Well, if he was to go and get a win at somewhere like Old Trafford, then I think that would then, whether it's right or wrong, whatever happens in the weeks to follow, it would give him more time and more leeway because of how massive that win would be. But definitely agree that I think Everton have the ability to beat this Man United side. And again, I can see a comment there saying about how I think United haven't lost at home since they lost to Arsenal on the first game of the season. And even in that game, they pushed Arsenal close. It's clearly going to be tough. And Man United are one of those sides, a bit like Tottenham, a bit like a few other teams which they've had so much money spent on their squad for such a concerted amount of time that the odds are stacked in their favour. But Everton can't go there thinking that they have no chance, because I actually think, and they've started well against the big clubs apart from Liverpool this season. They just haven't got that goal, and hopefully if they could go there and get an early goal, then you never know what happens next. We'll
come on to United then. Obviously you mentioned there that they have had a decent home record. They only lost once. In terms of us, our performances and our results, is there one performance, or maybe not even as just one performance, one period in a game where you thought, that's how I want Everton to play, and that's how I think Everton are going to pick up points and progress up the table?
Wolves away in the league was just the first 25 minutes. I remember just sitting there thinking, having not seen an Everton play with that much verve and that much technical ability and confidence. They were camped on the edge of the Wolves box for the 20-25 minutes, obviously got into the lead and Wolves couldn't touch them. And that was really how the game played out. It got nervy at various points, but that was really because Everton let them back into the game through mistakes, really. So that was the high point in terms of watching an Everton team this season and seeing that they have this newfound ability. Because obviously we're not used to that. It has been a couple of years now of backs against the wall, players camped on the edge of their own box, defending the box very well, and then just seeing what they can do on a counter and set pieces. And it worked well for Sean. It worked well enough for Sean Dyche, and it worked well for Moyes last season. But I think that whilst as good as that was against Wolves, I think the best version of what this Everton can probably consistently be this season, I think, is that first half an hour against Sunderland. Up at the Stadium of Light. I know that turned into a bit of a it turned into a very frustrating game, and Everton were lucky to escape with a draw. But they were so much the better side against Sunderland in that first half an hour. They got the goal. It was a very good goal, but they got the goal. Jack Grealish hit the post. They dominated. They forced Sunderland into so many mistakes, and it was just, I know we keep coming back to it, and Moyes obviously highlighted it after the game. I don't think Reggie Lebris, I don't think he shied away from it either. That Tierno Barry miss, and look, we want to give him all the confidence we can in the world. The last thing we want to do is jump on his back for something that happened a month ago. But it just changed everything. So I think at that point, Sunderland thought, you know what, this Everton side aren't going to score again. And I think the fans kind of thought that as well, because in the 10 minutes before that, I think 2 Sunderland players picked up bookings for daft tackles. They'd lost their composure. The fans were, brilliant home fans, but they were on the backs of their Sunderland players. They'd lost the momentum that they'd started the game with. Listening to one of the North East journalists up there, he watched Sunderland every game, and he said that first half an hour was the first and only time this season that Sunderland had looked overwhelmed in the Premier League. It was Everton that did it to him. And it was just that they kind of played with an authority and an aggressiveness and assertiveness and a confidence that just put them on the front foot, and they properly dominated them. And that's what I think Everton can do. I don't think they perhaps have all the tools in place to play. And I think opposition will typically be stronger than Wolves were when Everton played them at the end of August. So I don't think Everton are going to spend the full season having success with Dewsbury Hall and Dye and Grealish popping the ball around 15, 20 yards from goal and probing away until they finally find the chink in an opposition armour. But that way where they it was, iron fist in a velvet glove for the first half an hour against Sunderland. They were stronger than them, they were quicker than them, but they were also more intelligent than them, and they should have won that game.
Moving on to United then, and the game itself, how would you kind of approach it? Do you think United are maybe slightly more vulnerable earlier on in matches, or would they fade? And if you were David Moyes, would you try and go at them early on? Would you try and keep it as tight as early as possible, as long as possible?
It's really fascinating. Isn't it? I mean, I would go for the former. I'd go for the fast start, because I think this Manchester United side does appear to be improving, and it does look a little bit more consistent. But I think you have the momentum loss of an international break, and obviously so many of their players, so obviously some of Everton players went away, but so many of their players will have gone away. So you can get them on the back foot with that, a home crowd, which, whilst is seeing better things, is still so much more used to seeing much better days. And if you have to take the sting out of it early doors, and if you can lay a blow on them early, get some of them players thinking, get Ruben Amorim thinking about whether or not you need to change anything. Have the fans start looking at the players rather than getting on the backs of their own players rather than making it intimidating for Everton. Then I think that's what I'd do. And in fairness to Moyes, I think he learnt from the Liverpool game, in the sense that I spoke to him after that game, and he was most frustrated by that start, and there seemed to be a real kind of confusion amongst the Everton backroom staff about how they started that first half so poorly, because I think the intention had always been, remember Liverpool, whilst it had an incredible start to the season, they just had that really grueling stoppage time win over Atletico Madrid a couple of days earlier in the Champions League, and this was Saturday lunchtime kickoff. So they wanted to just hit them hard in the first half an hour and then reassess, and they did the opposite. They were terrible, went 2-0 down and lost the game because of that. But since then, Everton have tended to start games pretty well, and including against, say, some of them sides that are competing at the top end of the table, including Spurs and City. They should have taken the lead against both of those sides. They did against Sunderland, albeit a different type of opposition. They did against West Ham. Again, another game. Yeah. They did get a Villa where they should have scored. Everton have left so many points on the table this season already, and where they've been at their most threatening is those first 20 minutes. So they've missed chances, and that's probably the biggest area for improvement on what we've seen so far. We come back to the strikers. You look at Beto against Villa, City, Spurs. You look at Barry against Sunderland. There's 4 games there that Everton haven't won, and across there, there's probably 7 big chances at a time when it's either goalless or the game's in the balance. You're not asking them to put all 7 in. Maybe not even more than half, 4. But if they'd have put 2 in, Everton probably have 3 or 4 more points now than they have. And again, given how tight the table is, it would make such a big difference to how everything looks. If they can find a way, and hopefully, we saw glimmers of this, of Tierno Barry looking good in the last week before the international break. They could just find one of them strikers just to hit a little purple patch, then that could change things. Albeit, it is going to be against a lot of tough opposition over the coming weeks. So,
no, I agree with you. I think you're spot on in terms of being on that front foot early on. I think some of our performance is certainly away from him. I don't know if you mentioned the City one there, but I think a lot of it came from Illiman and Dye in his performance in the first half. But we were fantastic. And when you say blow, we need to land the blow. It can't just be possession or territory or missed chances. We have to score early on, don't we? Otherwise, United will just come. If we do what we did against City and fairly good 30-40 minute first half performance, but then United don't score and United get back in the game, that what's going to happen is that United will inevitably get back in the game.
I don't think it's an inevitability of Man United in the same way that it is with, say, a Manchester City. I think they are a little bit flakier than that, but you just look at the talent that they've got and that they can call upon. It's huge. And Everton still have a relatively small squad with some obvious limitations. And that has probably been part of the reason why the team has faded perhaps in the last half an hour of matches. And to add to that, I hopefully this will change, but Moyes perhaps hasn't made the best substitutions in some of those games around that mark as well.
Just an interesting comment there just popped up from Sandbanks Blues, who disagrees with both of us. Says, I can't agree that we start well. Actually, the opposite. More often than not, we lose a game in the first 30 minutes. Look at the derby. We simply didn't show up in the first half, and that is on Moyes. Just on that, before you come in, I think you referenced the Liverpool game as we didn't start well. I think that's fine. I think the Leeds game, you could probably say we didn't start well.
I referenced both as saying that they didn't start well.
So I'd probably say they're the only two that we didn't start well in. I think all the others, you've already mentioned it, where we did start relatively well.
Yeah, I think that one of the themes of the season, and say it's one that's perhaps gone a little bit under the radar because they haven't come away with the goals that would have changed those games, but it's how well they started.
Palace, as well. Maybe you could say Palace.
You maybe say Palace, but obviously they did go on to win that game. So you look at West Ham, they got an early goal. You look against Aston Villa, they didn't lose that game. Beto's big chance in that for the first 10 minutes. He should have scored, shouldn't he? Different game then. Fulham, they played really well, started well in that game. Obviously went on to get a win. Man City, Beto either gets there and misses or doesn't quite get there for Illiman and Dye in the first 5 minutes. You have the offside chance, which Donnarumma saves, which we haven't, because it didn't go in. We didn't have to have the check on VAR, but it looked like a tight call. You had Illiman and Dye having forcing Donnarumma into a really good save in that game. Just trying to think what else. We got Sunderland 1-0 up, hit the post. Then Tierno Barry has that huge miss, so it would have been 2. Spurs, I think Beto should do better with the chance that comes across the box in the first 5 minutes. So, I can't agree with the comment, to be perfectly honest.
I think just keep sticking with it. I think in terms of a home and away dynamic, I think if you look at Sunderland, started well, took the lead. I think City, we were certainly the better team for the first 30 minutes. They're always going to be dangerous no matter what because of the players that we've got. Beto did miss the chance. Wolves obviously started well, picked up the 3 points. If anything, we probably faded in that game. We were 3-1 up. Shouldn't have ended it 3-2.
That's it. With the exception of Liverpool and Leeds was just a generally bad day.
Yeah. I think Moyes did get it wrong for Liverpool, because if you look at how Liverpool have gone on over the course of the past 2 months, I think people have realised, this is how you play Liverpool, and we didn't do that.
Yeah, I think
be a bit more direct.
But I think the bigger problem has been the final half an hour of games rather than the first half an hour.
Yeah. Okay. So
and obviously, the final half an hour of games has been harder because they haven't got the goals in the first half an hour that perhaps they should have picked up. So
and substitutions just haven't made that impact.
Like I say, I have to concede on that thing. I do think that some of the problems have been self-inflicted.
Comment here from the Blues says, the teams that beat United have pace up top and do them on the counter, but we don't have any pace, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. That kind of, again, I kind of think this, maybe not so much this season, because all of a sudden the likes of Cunha and Buemo, they do have a lot more like intelligence and craft, I think, going forward, or in that front three. It's not all about pace and all about eventually firing the way through. It's difficult. I wouldn't encourage Everton to sit back, but because of that reason that the Blues mentioned, they don't really have that pace. Obviously, if the game goes on, you can maybe look at that. I mean, I think Tieno Barry's worth a start based on how he finished before the international break. I do like, if Everton have something to hold on to, then the idea of drawing Arsenal, Man United onto them later on in the game and having Alcaraz and Beto kind of teeing up with against a higher back line would be something that's worth considering. And again, that's probably one of the weapons that we haven't seen Moyes use anywhere near as enough as we think he probably should have done. But yeah, I would be aggressive in the first to start the game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the areas that we could probably exploit, but obviously, we've got quality on the wide, so we're always going to look to get the ball to Jack Grealish and Illiman and Dye, as long as they play. In terms of getting the ball forward, I do think there's an opportunity. And again, it's going to depend on who he plays up front and whether the ball sticks, but being a little bit more direct to the striker within the middle of the park as well. And Barry seemed to be capable of doing that against Fulham, holding the ball up, but it's getting players in and around him, close enough to him.
It's that midfield dynamic that they just had the problem with. The problem with playing with going route one to him is then you need midfielders up around him, but then because you haven't got Branthwaite at the back, you just create these chasms, don't you, in the middle of the pitch.
It's going to be difficult, and obviously Moyes is going to come up with the solution. When I say route one, I don't necessarily mean just lump the ball up to him. I think it's getting the balls into the channels for him to chase onto, and he seems to be capable of holding the ball up. It's just, is he going to be able to do that with a United defence? Probably capable of seeing him out. I think set pieces as well. We need to take advantage of set pieces. Something that we haven't massively done.
Yeah, it's interesting that because you do look at depends who plays, but you got like some Maguire and De Ligt again. They don't always cover themselves in huge amounts of glory. So yeah, I mean, I can't sit here and say I know the perfect way to go at them, but I do think that this Everton side could go there and do a job. Obviously, it's on Moyes to figure out how to, but it will be interesting. And I think the thing that I'm really fascinated by, I'm fascinated to see how he sets up. He pulled Timo Robenham out of absolutely nowhere for me for the Fulham game. Yeah. I did not see that one coming. I think even though we could all see a pathway whereby Garner may well have moved over to right back, for me it would always have been Roll that I've been expecting to kind of come into the middle. So we pulled a Robenham out of nowhere, and the Robenham, I mean, he did well in the final minutes against Sunderland, but he did well in that game. Like fair play. For the hour, he got a little bit leggy on the hour mark, picked up the yellow card, but he'd done a lot of running and done a lot of it effectively, so fair enough. So I don't know if he sticks with that or not, because I still think they're having a much stronger with Garner in centre midfield. But then,
we know where your team selection's going then.
Well, I mean, but this is it. I mean, we called on Moyes to be a little bit more adventurous with his squad, and he was. And now I'm trying to work out what you do, because there are still big questions on. I think the big questions of the next. What are we on now? November the 20th. So we've basically got a month now until Idrissa Gueye and Illiman and Dye likely depart. I can't see any reason why Everton wouldn't be in the Senegal squad for the Africa Cup of Nations. So we've got a month there to try and figure out what to do, and you have to start integrating people before then. I don't think you can necessarily go all the way up to Arsenal. If that's the last game they're available for, maybe they need to join their squads earlier than that. I'm not sure. But say, for instance, Arsenal was the last game, that you can't go all the way up to there and then Burnley start bringing in Dibbling and Roll for the first time properly. So for the next few weeks, Moyes has the ability to use all of them and kind of have that gentle integration, doesn't he? So, but I'd be really interested to see what he does, certainly with Merlin Roll, because he speaks so highly of Merlin Roll from what he sees behind the scenes, but then to not kind of start him ahead of a Robin. I mean, maybe reading too much into that. Roll didn't train for the full week in that week before the Fulham game. So it may be that he had a little niggle that just prevented them from wanting to take the risk to start him. Obviously, did come on with half an hour to go, so they had faith in his body to last that long. But I do think that probably the best Everton 11, all things considered, ends up with, I think Roll probably ends up in there. I think, if you assume that he's integrated and he's fully fit, and you've got all of those players, ready to go for you. What do you think? Would you have Roll in there? That kind of.
It comes back to James Garner, doesn't it? And where Moyes sees him fitting in at this moment in time.
Because you can put Garner on the right. At right back and get the benefits you do from that if you've got Roll in the middle to go alongside Gay, haven't you? I think
I've just got so many questions on whether James Garner is a better midfielder than he is a right back, or a better right back than he is a midfielder. And I mentioned this on the pod last time. I don't think it's any coincidence that Idrissa Gana-Gueye had one of his best games in a good couple of weeks with the absence of James Garner in midfield.
Yeah, that's an interesting call.
I do think there's a real, in that two-man, duet, pivot, whatever you want to call it. I do think they're kind of stuck in what roles are they are they doing the same thing, because they're actually both getting forward a little bit. I mean, James Garner is always looking to have a shot off, on the edge of the area. Just again, he's scored, one or two goals, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So I think, do we need just to basically say, well, one of them is the holder and sit there?
Yeah, I think that Garner does better in midfield in a free, and I kind of think that, I wonder if, we know that Moyes likes Dewsbury Hall a lot, and Dewsbury Hall had his best game in an Everton shirt against Fulham as well. I do kind of, Garner, you'd have Garner and Gay, and then the third one, depending on what you wanted from them, maybe being Dewsbury Hall sitting deeper than he traditionally has, or Merlin Roll as an 8, or who will crash into the box with you using his physicality. Kind of wonder if that's the dynamic that Evan will eventually move towards, but I don't know. He surprised me with his lineup against Fulham, and it'll be interesting to see what he does going forward.
I think this is the way I'm going to look at it. I'm going to try and look at it quite logically. So the Blues have said, with regards to James Garner, he's a better right back, and I do actually agree with that. The problem that James Garner has got at this moment in time in the players that he's got around him, who is a better number 6, James Garner or Idrissa Gana-Gueye? For me, regardless of age and longevity, it's Idrissa Gana-Gueye.
Yeah, well, not. But Gana-Gueye isn't really a 6, though, is he?
Well, in terms of the holding midfielder, then someone who's going to sit and do the blocks and put in the tackles, and then you've got the 8 or whatever that player who'll play a little bit further forward, probably behind the number 10. You're saying Roll fits into that, or should fit into that place, and I agree.
I think Roll and Dewsbury Hall kind of depended on the game. I mean, it's a luxury to have the potential to have, but to interchange the two of them, isn't it?
So where does it leave James Garner in midfield then? I'm not saying he's not. This sounds like I'm being critical of him, and I'm not. I'm just thinking in terms of doing specific jobs in that midfield. I think
Garner's looked quite good as a 6 when he's played there and told to sit back. I think in pre-season he did quite well in some of the games this season he has as well. I think if you have him as a deeper lying one, and then you have Gay a little bit further forward, and then either a Dewsbury Hall or a Roll alongside them, but. Yeah, again, this is just the problem that they just leave themselves with some of the holes that they've got in the squad, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know if we'll get on to talking about January in this podcast, but an obvious place to try and do some business would be at right back, and then we can, because there's a danger that Everton never quite see the full capabilities of this squad, because you just always end up with players playing out of position. Garner's versatility has probably hindered him in some respects, and I do wonder the way that Merlin Roll spoke, the way that David Moyes has spoke to me about Merlin Roll and the different positions that he can play. I wonder if we'll end up in a situation where Roll will become another player that is always used to firefight in other areas, sacrificing the centre midfield as a result.
Well, there's the option that he has been spoke about on the pod over the past couple of weeks, that Roll could be used as the number 10. Fellaini type role.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I've spoken to Moyes, the conversation has more been about what he can do out wide and the fact that he can play both full back and midfield on both sides.
Okay.
So, and look, there is probably a bit to be desired from Everton at left back and right back, isn't there? And you kind of we all hope that Tyler Diblin will emerge over the coming weeks to be the obvious replacement for Ndai, and Moyes wants that to be the case. But if for some reason he doesn't, then could you end up, I mean, Merlin Roll or James Garner could end up in those positions, couldn't they? So, I mean, as well as Alcaraz or McNeil, and I don't think Alcaraz looks anywhere near as good on the right. And
no,
I don't think McNeil is a right midfielder for Everton.
In terms of key battles, you've mentioned there the left-back situation. So we've got a comment here from zgold5089. Says, aren't you guys worried that Mykolenko will be ripped apart versus Mbeumo or Ahmad? I mean, in defence of Mykolenko, some of his best games have been up against some of the best wingers, in the league. And I think when he's just focusing on his defensive game rather than the emphasis on being attacked, that's when he kind of comes into his own as a defensive fullback. We know we want him to get a little bit further forward and improve with his delivery and crosses and stuff like that. But any concerns left back situation?
I mean, always concerns when you come up against players of that quality. And Mbeumo hit a rich vein of form heading into the international break as well, and Amad Diallo did a little bit too. And Diallo looked good against Everton at Old Trafford last season. I think it was Amarin's first home game. Was it 4-0? Everton again were just blown away by Man United in that game. Look, I mean, Man United have more better players than Everton, and if they can get more of them to perform well together, then they should beat Everton. But obviously, that's been the case with Man United's squad for a number of years, and whilst they have typically managed to beat Everton whilst doing so, they've lost lots of games, lots and lots of other teams, haven't they? And it'd be bloody nice if Everton could be the one. I mean, like, it's been so disheartening going to Old Trafford. I'm just trying to think now of the times I've been there. Every time you kind of go in there, fall in this track, because Manchester United have been such a circus for so long. You go there and you think that's the most likely of that traditional, not even traditional, but of that big six, the Sky Six, maybe a better term of them. You think that's where the chance is going to be, and Everton have just been so poor. I think it was under Deitch last season. Was it 4-0 with Amram's first game, and they were woeful.
We started that game off fairly well. I remember first 10, 15, 20 minutes. I'm sure that we did, and then it just fell apart after conceding the first goal.
Season before, was that Ben Godfrey was that the one when they gave away 2 penalties? Possibly.
Trying to erase it from our memories,
yeah,
obviously.
I know. It just every time going there and just being like, just Everton not turning up. It's just so annoying. Yeah, as opposed to say City, where earned a draw under Lampard and a draw under Deitch. Played reasonably well played well for the first hour. This time round. Even Arsenal went and got a draw there last season. Chelsea drew there under Deitch when he first came in. Old Trafford, man. I tell you, maybe this could be the one. Monday night under the lights.
Let's hope so.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Going to put you on the spot then in terms of the back line. Would you keep faith with the back line that beat Fulham, or would you change it? Well, 2 questions. What do you think Moyes is going to do, and what would you do? Told you I'd put you on the spot, didn't I?
What do I think Moyes? I mean, I think a lot of it probably depends on where Roll is with his fitness and whether or not you could bring him into the midfield equation a little bit. Because I'd feel more comfortable. And Robin had a good game against Fulham, and I think he may well be turning into a relatively useful squad player. He was like he looked good at the end of the Sunderland game when the game got frantic and it got end to end. He's kind of perfect for those occasions.
Yeah.
Like, he covers ground so well.
Yeah.
But he's really good at kind of putting in a last-ditch tackle, if a midfielder's breaking through or something like that. He can carry the ball quite well as well. But I think that if you're going away somewhere like Man United, I'm still not sure that... I mean, this is me saying this. I haven't seen an awful lot of Merlin Roll. So, I mean, I'm working on assumptions that he has got the talent that people keep telling me about and saying he's got as opposed to anything else. But I think that I would probably revert to type and go O'Brien at right back and move Garner into the centre midfield, away from home. against a team of that talent.
Is that just on the assumption, or I'm saying you're assuming it, this is me saying it, that the people who I've spoke to with regards to whether they change or not, is that just because you think we'd be bringing O'Brien back into the team over Garner and putting Garner back in midfield, we'd just be a bit more defensively solid?
I think they'd just be a little bit more solid, yeah. I think a little bit more defensively solid. And yeah, Fulham, again, a side that used to come into Everton and winning, but a side that also had a difficult start to the season. You can be a bit more ambitious, I think, against Fulham at home than you can Man United away, or this version.
I do get that argument. I do get it.
And I think that in so many of those games that we've talked about where Everton have made a good start, they've made a good start even though they had those obvious limitations in centre midfield and at fullback. So they are still capable of doing that. I certainly think that if Everton were to get an early goal, then that's the kind of the back six that you'd want to then be defending the lead.
Okay, yeah.
O'Brien at right back, Mykolenko at left back, and Garner in the middle. That's certainly the strongest option available to Moyes currently to defend something. But yeah, so I think that's what I'd do, and I'd start Tierney Barry up front because I think that does put an awful lot of reliance on Ndiaye and Grealish, and hopefully Dewsbury Hall, so he starts in the middle to be able to cause attacking problems alongside Barry, without the support from fullback. But I do think they could probably do that, and I do think this is the type of game as well that Man United might go into a little bit naive and might leave themselves a little bit exposed. And those are clever players that can punish teams. Maybe they will. What would you do?
I would stick with Garner. I did say it. I just think in terms of balance, and okay, Garner got caught out a little bit against Fulham, but every left back, every right back's going to get caught out. Jake O'Brien's had a tough time over the past couple of weeks against pacey wingers. It's going to be a tough game. No matter what right back we pick, we could get beat. So it's just about finding that consistency, really, and finding that what can we do with the players that we've got, and where are the players best suited to make an impact. And at this moment in time, I do think James Garner is better, or could make more of an impact as a right back. And I think that did prove that against Fulham the other Saturday ago. The big question mark is who does slot in midfield, because I do think there's still question marks over Irabumum, and there's definitely still question marks over Roll as well. So he's not going to change Kieran Dewsbury Hall as the number 10. That's, I think, safe to say. The three behind the strikers, as long as they're fit, are going to stay the same as well. Yeah,
I mean, Dewsbury Hall looked as if you sat a little bit deeper against Fulham, and it worked quite well.
I agree with that.
I'd rather, I know we get into just technicalities and that, but I would rather Dewsbury Hall as an 8 than a 10. I think in a game like this, just sit a little bit deeper and see how it goes.
I mean, I think he was able to do that primarily because Barry was able to hold the ball up a little bit more. I think he was able to come a little bit deeper rather than just kind of being in the wilderness of waiting for long balls or balls into the channels. So I think maybe with Barry holding the ball up a little bit better than what Beto has done previously, I think that could have been a contributing factor. So you would pretty much keep it the same, other than you bring O'Brien back in. Yeah,
I'd bring O'Brien back in for Robinham and then move Garner to into the midfield. But I'm not laying claim here to having the perfect solution.
No, I don't think there is there?
To this. And I think unless and until other issues within the squad are addressed, it's going to be a little bit of this kind of meddling and fiddling around at the seams a little bit, isn't it? Kind of trying to put the best team out there rather than being able to constantly use players to the best of their ability in their best positions. So,
prediction? Do you want to give a prediction?
Can I back it all up after all that? Can I go there? You know what? I'm going to go 1-0 Everton.
Wow. That was bold.
Yeah, get the early goal. Hold on.
I want to go for a 1-1 with a point.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do think we could go there and pick up a result, even if it is just a point.
Yeah.
I take it, to be honest.
Yeah, a point would be a good result, I think. I think so.
It'd be great if we could back it up with 3 points against Newcastle.
Yeah, that Newcastle game, so we go United away on Monday, does it? Then it's Newcastle on Saturday night.
Bournemouth
Bournemouth away on the Tuesday night.
Sounds like you've got a bit of Everton fatigue, and we haven't even got back from the international break.
I've got Bournemouth fatigue because I've only ever seen Everton end in absolute disaster down there, and it's been so grim every time. It's not even like they've just the 2 in a week under Lampard. That was terrible. You had then went there under Deitch. Remember, Beto equalised in the last minute, and then in stoppage time, Coleman scored an own goal, a cross diverted in off his. That was a grim during that horrible 4-month winless run.
Yeah, that was terrible.
And then the last time, obviously it was Deitch's last game, and that just felt like, that felt like the end of Deitch's era. That was I asked him at the end, kept in the press conference when he kept saying it was close because it was 1-0 and they'd scored a late goal, and I went back in for a second bite at the end of the press conference. Said, you keep saying it was close, but what Everton didn't have a shot on target. That felt closer to being 3-0 to Bournemouth than it did 1 each. And maybe at that point he thought, you know what? Maybe that was the point he thought, I can't be bothered with this anymore.
Sick to death of Joe Thomas asking these questions.
Who's this idiot? Just and then driving back on the motorway that night was grim. That was when we had all the snow at the start of last year and the ice. We were literally driving back as the roads were freezing.
Wow.
We had skidded in the car at one point coming off.
Well, if the weather keeps going the way it is at the minute,
well,
might be the same.
We might do. Yeah, we did a little skid across the surface at 1 o'clock in the morning somewhere. Chris was driving, did well to kind of rescue the situation. So I'm kind of relying on maybe I'm putting too much kind of emphasis on my gut or my hopes or things that can't keep happening. You keep seeing that meme at the moment, don't we, where someone puts it to Mick McCarthy, it can't keep happening, can it? He goes, it can. And it's just like, you can keep losing at Bournemouth, you can keep losing at Old Trafford, but come on. Surely, right, the next 3 games, always lose at Old Trafford, always lose at Bournemouth. Obviously, we've got Newcastle at home, up and down against them.
You've gone from saying a 1-0 positive result to talk.
That's what I'm saying. Surely, at some point it's got to change.
Well,
and maybe this is the time.
Monday is the time.
Maybe this is the time, Ian. That's it.
Any final thoughts then, Joe?
I'm delirious and I haven't even lost any sleep to the Ashes yet.
Yeah.
So
you're just that excited by England playing Australia.
There's a lot of cricket. There's some big cricket fans, that England team in the Everton team. Sorry, yeah.
I don't know if there's any big cricket fans on our stream at this moment.
No. When Everton went out to Sydney in Australia under Frank Lampard, that was 2022. Wasn't during the World Cup break. That was it. England were on tour over there at the time they played in Sydney, and they took quite a big party over there. Big group of players went to go and watch it. I went as well, but I didn't get to go and join them up in the seats at the SCG, which was, great experience ticked off. But yeah, Michael Keane, James Tarkowski, I think although you perhaps couldn't tell how big a cricket fans are. I'm not sure if you saw this. The Everton media team put a video out last night of them trying to hit the stumps, and
I haven't seen it.
They didn't cover themselves in glory.
No.
So
better defenders than they are cricket players.
Barry's got to start. We agree on that, haven't we? Just
Absolutely,
I know you're trying to get off this stream, but
no, Barry. I'm all for Barry. I think he's done enough in the past 2, even against Sunderland.
The first half an hour against Sunderland looked good, and then we saw the best and the worst. The miss the miss was what the miss. You can just kind of say that just happens. The yellow card after was that's what killed it for him that game.
I think as well, turn it into a positive with Beto, that I think he could be more of a potent weapon coming off the bench than he is starting.
Yeah, well, just again wrote a piece on this the other day saying, Troy Parrott's had an international break where he scored a bag full of goals, so understandably now everybody's linking him to Everton. And we saw this in the summer as well. Everton have a little bit of money. Where are they struggling up front? It's an obvious link to make, isn't it? And those things are only going to grow and grow. We've had weeks of Frankie Lino-Dew at Midtjylland and Ivan Toney from obviously he's at Al Ahly at the moment, haven't we? And I'd be saying to Tiano Barrett, Everton don't want to sign a striker. They would, if in their dream scenario, they would not want to be going into a January transfer window having to try and find a striker because it's such a difficult market, such a difficult job anyway. Well, Tiano Barry and Beto have got 4 or 5 weeks to end the speculation themselves. So that's what I'd be saying to them. have to be. If you don't want to wake up every morning and read about Troy Parrott here or Joshua Zirkzee there or something like that, come and score some goals for us, because it'll save everybody a lot of time, effort, and money if Everton go into January and they've got a striker in form.
Definitely, without a doubt. We will finish the pod. We'll call it a day. Just a reminder that we had an interview with former Sky Sports broadcast journalist Alan Myers, and that went out on YouTube and Apple and Spotify on Tuesday. He got some interesting stories, namely one where he had a bit of an altercation back in the mid-90s with a group called the Mersey Mafia. So yeah, really good insight from Alan. He was well worth the hour of that podcast. Joe, thanks for coming on as always, and enjoy your day off tomorrow. You are obviously going to Old Trafford on Monday to follow and cover the Blues, and we're back tomorrow for the Friday show, but we are going to be back Tuesday, aren't we, to react to the United 1-0 win to Everton, hopefully. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week and weekend. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Joe Thomas, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.